Today's superstition is inspired by last month's video, where I talked about throwing salt over your left shoulder to prevent the devil from giving you bad luck. In that video, I asked why was the left side considered evil and the right side good. This is what I'm going to talk about today. Why is this the association to the left hand, and where it came from? In 2022, we don't consider being left-handed or having a left side dominance to be a big deal. It's just a physical difference among us humans. However, that was not the case up until a few decades ago. Let's begin with the word left itself. Left is an Old English word that means relating to, situated on, or being on the side of the body in which the heart is mostly located. But it is in the Latin word for left, which is sinister, that we can derive its association to being evil further. The word sinister literally means on the left. Today, we associate the word sinister as very suggestive of darkness and evil, which doesn't really help its cause. On the other hand, pun intended, the Latin word for right, dexter, has positive connotations, such as being dexterous, meaning being good with your hands, or ambidextrous, being good with both hands equally. You can also see this discrimination of the left side in other languages. In French, and forgive my pronunciation, the word left is gauche, which means awkward and unsophisticated, while the French word for right, droit, means straight, like the arrow. In German, the word left is links, which also means awkward. And those are just a few languages. So with just the word itself, it's already at a disadvantage that people place it in a negative light. On top of that, religion played another strong reason behind the association of evil with the left hand. Starting with Christianity, in the Bible's book of Matthew depicts the judgment day for humanity, which reads as follows: He shall separate all nations from one another, as a shepherd divides his sheep from the goats. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, Come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundations of the world. Then shall he say unto them on the left hand, Depart from me, you cursed, into everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. This passage means that those who are on the right side were saved from eternal damnation, while those on the left side were sent down to hell to burn forever. Obviously, it's a metaphor, but this passage alone depicts that the left side as the path for sinners and hell, while the right side was the correct and righteous path to God. Anyone who read or heard this excerpt would be influenced to think that the right side is the correct side to be on if they wanted salvation in the afterlife. In addition, in the book of Ezekiel, it depicts a scene where God is seated in the middle of his throne, while Jesus, who symbolizes salvation, sits on his right-hand side. On the left side is Angel Gabriel, who is also known as the Angel of Judgment. Jesus sacrificed himself in order to save the sinners, while Angel Gabriel is known to dole out God's punishment to the sinners. For the believers, it's pretty clear where most people would want to stand during Judgment Day. To drive the point home, in Peter Paul Rubens's painting named The Fall of Man, shows that Eve is standing on the left side of Adam. For those who aren't familiar, Eve was tempted by Satan, disguised as a snake, to eat the fruit from the tree of life that God specifically told them not to touch. She ate the fruit and convinced Adam to do the same. Because of this, they were both casted out of paradise and had to endure hardships that would be passed on to their children generations after generations. This influence was carried over across the pond during the 17th century when the Salem witch trials occurred. Among the many beliefs about witches, Many of them connected the devil with the left side or being left-handed. It was believed that Satan baptized his followers with his left hand. Consequently, all the witches would also greet dear old Satan with their left hands. During the trials, a woman accused of dabbling with the left-handed path, which is another name for black magic, was stripped off her clothes and searched for any weird markings on the left side. Any markings or scars on the left side of her body would indicate that she is a witch, and she would be put to death. Heaven forbid, if you were a left-handed woman with scars on your left side, you were immediately dubbed as a witch and was given a death sentence, even though you might actually be innocent. Other religions also engaged in this left-hand discrimination. In Judaism, the Old Testament spoke of two human impulses, Yetzer. Yetzer Tov, an inclination towards good, appears on the right, while Yetzer Ra, an inclination towards wickedness, appears on the left. In addition, Muslims use their right hand to do honorable things, like worship or welcoming guests into their homes, while the left hand is used for unclean but necessary things, like cleaning themselves after going to the bathroom. Basically, the left hand did all the literal dirty work for the person so that the right hand doesn't have to be sullied. These accounts and traditions from different religions cemented the left hand's inferiority to the right in their practitioners' minds all over the world. Since a minority of people with left-hand preferences exist, these beliefs stood firm through the centuries and were backed by quote-unquote science as recently as a few decades ago. Cesare Lombroso, who is considered the father of criminology, wrote in 1903 that, and I quote, "Man advances in civilization and culture, he shows an always greater right-sidedness as compared to women and savage races, who, even when they are not properly left-handed, have certain gestures and movements which are a species of left-handedness." End quote. He also posited that those who are left-handed had physical abnormalities that lead them to commit more crimes than their right-handed counterparts. And yes, he also added women in that paper, being considered the weaker sex. But I digress. To further this bogus science, an Austrian physician and psychologist, Wilhelm Stekel, wrote in the same year that the right-hand path always signifies the way to righteousness, and the left-hand path is the path to crime. He stated being left-handed may signify homosexuality, incest, perversion, and relations with a prostitute. Now, imagine being accused of being gay because you are left-handed. As ridiculous as both of these excerpts sound, they were real published work, and they were not the last to discriminate on left-handedness. As recently as the 70s, psychologist and psychoanalyst Theodor Blau wrote that left-handed children, or sinister children, were academically and behaviorally challenged, and more likely to develop schizophrenia. He also believed left-handers grew up to be rigid and sometimes obsessed with cleanliness. He thought mental disorders were caused by being left-handed. Basically, if you had the unfortunate fate of being born left-handed, then you are likely to be weaker, have a tendency to commit crime, be gay, and prone to developing mental disorders. And these claims were all coming from men of science. Unfortunately, even I can personally attest to my own late grandmother telling me that in her elementary school years, their teachers would use a ruler to whack the fingers of the left-handed kids if they used their left hands to write. They were taught to be right-handed, even though it was against their natural inclination. She was born in 1927, this would be in a different country, and she would be in her elementary school years, around the 40s. Plus, she was also a devout Catholic. So, I'm inclined to believe that these were real practices during those times, influenced by what we have learned so far. Fortunately enough, Modern-day society has gotten better at the scientific method and debunking these earlier published studies. We know now that being left-handed is just a physiological trait, just like having different colored eyes. Modern people have also become more inclusive in our beliefs and have managed to work past what religion and outdated traditions have dictated for so long. We don't punish people for being left-handed anymore. While the world still prefers right-handers because it's still the majority, the stigma around left-handedness has diminished greatly. Now, people even consider it as a positive trait to have. So, to any southpaws out there, in case you didn't already know, there's nothing wrong with being left-handed. It's just unfortunate that history was not on your side.